All right, hello, everybody. Work group device management meeting, first one for 2025. Welcome back, everybody. Well, maybe some of you, I'm back. I'm just back. Other people are probably already back, but welcome to the new year. Awesome. Well, let's get started. As I said, I'm just back, so I don't have any agenda items, but other than we need to, I'll just call it out. We've got maybe a month. I haven't looked at the actual schedule that was approved, and so we've got a lot to do in the next few weeks. John H., it looks like you've got an agenda item here. Do we have?
I don't see John. He's a colleague of mine, so maybe we could punt him to the back of the list if he comes online in a bit.
All right, then you're up next, John.
Yeah, cool. Mine is really simple. Just what can I do to help? What can we do to sort of pre-plan the set of KEPs we want to drive for 133 ASAP? Because as you mentioned, we're sort of in the 5-week crunch already.
Yeah.
It's hard just to imagine.
So last meeting that we had before the holidays, this is what I was proposing. Obviously, that's just a proposal, but this is what I'd like to see us take the one debate out. Looks like Kevin's got. Go ahead, Kevin.
I was just gonna say, I noticed one that's missing here, the recasting extended resources as DRA devices. They created an issue for it, but I think it didn't make it to this list.
I would love to see that in here as well. Yeah, let's add that to the list.
I'll see if I can dig it up and add it in here.
Okay. Yeah, that would be super important because it gets us to get that into alpha and get a step closer. The scoring one, I don't expect to be. I wouldn't even say. I mean, right here, I put a possible alpha there. I think that's more like a possible pre-alpha, but I'd like to make some progress on the design. But the other ones, the prioritized list, Morton has basically done. We want Tim to review. I don't know, Tim, did Tim take a look at that yet?
No, I don't think
Okay.
you've seen it yet.
Tim and I discussed it before. Like he's going to look at the API. Patrick and I had some discussions, and it's whatever. It's up to API reviewers. But it's basically done. And then the partitionable devices one, that's the one that's like nearest and dearest to my heart, probably. I do have a change on that. Morton will talk a little bit on what we want to use that for on multi-host. I've talked to several of you about it on Slack before. Yeah, so that's from my point of view, those are the critical things, but the one you just mentioned too, Kevin.
Yeah, but there's one more from Rita. She took over the admin access aspect of our current KEP, and she simplified it so that it can be implemented as a check in the API server in the normal REST layer. So it's I've seen the code. It's really fairly minimal, and it standardizes the proposal that we had in the KEP around having a namespace label as the mechanism, and she just picks a name that is then part of a Kubernetes API and implements that. So that seemed fairly straightforward. And that will be a separate KEP because it has its own feature gate, the DRA admin access. And that's fairly along. I think she already has a KEP PR.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, I reviewed that yesterday, and I feel super optimistic about that being viable for 133. So
awesome. Okay. Okay.
It's a link in the that's today.
Oh, it is. Okay. Never mind that.
Next entry is done.
You're right. This is last week. This is last. Okay. So
all these notes are great. Is the DRA board, can it accommodate the criteria of represent what's in 133? Can we?
We can set milestones.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that would be awesome to sort of to set that up as soon as possible and then just really drive for fidelity of plan.
All of the issues should be already listed in the board. We just need to basically update the milestones after discussing what's really for 133 and what's not.
Yeah, and some of them are sig node and some of them are sig scheduling, I think, so we'll have to work with the leads in those sigs to opt them in.
Well, we can, okay, you're right. We can't change the enhancement issues. We can just indicate our preference. Yeah, ultimately it's the six that need to do that.
I don't think they'll
I
have a
probably,
problem with this.
technically I might be able to do it because I think I'm now a milestone maintainer, and I think that extends to the to the enhancement repo, but I probably shouldn't from a formal point of view.
Yeah, I mean, I'm root in the enhancements repo, but I don't, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like superpowers I shouldn't use for that.
Yes.
So, awesome, then, Jack, that's a great topic. I think we're good. So I guess Rita, if you're here, you wanna go over the admin access thing, or you just,
I think we've covered it. I think
Okay.
it's really
Then-
straightforward. There is one standardized name we might need to look at that, but that can be done part of the CAP process. I think it's Kubernetes IO / admin access, but I would need to look at the CAP.
okay, yeah, I wonder about, I've never loved the word admin because it implies, the actual mechanism is simply unaccounted allocation of resources. Admin implies, right, some more semantic meaning, but I'm not really like gonna make a fuss about it. It's just, it really what it is we bind you to a pod without accounting for it. And so the admin doesn't quite capture that. It seems to capture more than that. And less than that.
Yeah, some of that language is in the new cap too. So that if we can clarify that, because it is a bit weird. If we can
Yeah.
express
Okay,
that
well,
as clearly as
that'll be
possible.
on
it'd be great.
my, yeah, that'll be my agenda to review that cap ASAP. Awesome.
Okay,
So
cool.
Morten, you wanna
one
talk about
final
the-
thing before we break on the subject. Sig node is in 90 minutes. I'm happy to go and advocate for the sig node touching milestones so we can just get that conversation started early, unless someone else is already doing that.
I mean, I work pretty closely with those folks, so does Patrick, and so does Kevin, but you're welcome to, like, I guess, yeah, I probably was gonna attend that. I don't think I have something else conflicting today. But yeah, let's
Cool.
let them know. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I think we are getting to the point where some of these enhancements are not actually touching kubelet anymore at all. So we might have to rethink. Or for some of these caps, it's really up to SIG scheduling, SIG API. So we may have to be a bit more selective which SIG we ask for approval or review.
Yeah, so for the prioritized alternatives, I think that's SIG scheduling, actually. We didn't even do it in
Yes.
SIG node.
Yes.
Partitionable, frankly, yeah, I mean, that I
Same
don't know.
thing. Same thing.
Yeah.
It doesn't affect kubelet.
Doesn't
So
touch kubelet, but it does touch the DRA drivers a lot. So
that's true. But then again, SIG node doesn't develop drivers.
that.
Well, they are perhaps the first go-to point for users or prospective developers. But yeah,
A good point.
it's an edge case in a sense. We can still treat SIG node as the main owner of DRA and just pull them in for everything.
It sounds like we have the right admin levers. Maybe we just be good citizens and say, hey, heads up, we're tagging this sig node adjacent thing for 133 and give folks an opportunity to object.
Yeah,
which they probably wouldn't.
We can sort it out with them. That works.
I can figure out which one applies for SIG scheduling. I know that the prioritize alternatives is the one.
Partitionable
I
devices.
think scoring
certainly.
also would be there,
Yeah.
but that's, like I said, not one
Right. I can review them and start the
Thank you,
discussion
Noah.
if needed.
The
So the
resource
extended
health or
resources-
device health, that's also mostly scheduling. That's the only in-tree component that actually probably needs to be modified for that. And so And that's just one
For
if
the
check essentially.
First one, the health
Yeah.
status to pod status,
Yeah,
that's
because
pod spec.
that's wait a second. Pod status, yes, pod status is SIG node, definitely. No, I was thinking about device health, which actually isn't.
It's not
It's
on
not
here.
it's not on this list, but it is the one that I've been taking over, or that I planned to do.
If you think you can do it in 130,
Yeah, I think I
133,
can.
let's
Yeah, that's
put that
one
into
cap
the-
that I'm doing. Everything else is other people now, so
okay.
should be
Awesome.
fine.
Scaling. We're scaling, folks.
Yes,
All
excellent.
right, Morten, do you want to talk about the multi-host piece?
Yeah, so I've written up a doc that you leverages the partitionable devices doc, the cap to be able to handle like TPUs, which are need to be scheduled across multiple VMs in certain topologies. And it does that by proposing an additional field, essentially having a node selector on individual devices. But it's
On partitions. Or did you do it on devices or on partitions? In the partitionable, I guess that's effectively the same thing.
under like what is called a composite device.
Okay.
So yeah, it's
So the idea, yeah,
some things that gets a little bit weird maybe in the term of like it's partitionable device. If you think about that as like one device being split up, it's sort of different because it's like a device, or it's sort of multiple devices being combined into a single one. So some of the things gets a little strange maybe. So we'll be able to, someone else can take a look also and see if there are other ideas about how we might do this. Further down in the doc, there are some ideas about potentially
different
doing
ways.
something like, do you want to do something like a group, a device that like a group of other devices, and that allows you to aggregate the node selector from the individual devices on nodes. But yeah.
Yeah, so backing up a little, the context is right. We have a partitionable devices originally is conceived as supporting things like MIG or single node, like we would use it in TPUs for within a single node, the valid topologies of TPUs, the valid combinations of TPUs, because only certain ones go together. But we also have a use case where we have these multi-node topologies of TPUs. So let's say you've got 4 nodes, right? You can take those 4 nodes and you can use them all for a single workload. I mean, obviously it's a single workload, but it's 4 pods, 1 per node, but it's a single, say, training job that's all working in concert. But you also could, because of the way we provision these in GCE, right, you could subslice that, what we call a TPU slice, that 4-node topology. You could subslice it, or it could be even a bigger one, right? And you could subslice it, and say one of those nodes fails. We don't want to have to re-provision an entirely new 4-node thing if you can use a subslice. And so a partitionable model allows us to immediately account for a node failure, and much like as if the node were consumed, and still make the subslices, the valid subslices, available to workloads that could fit on them. So this is helpful for us. And so what we realized a while back was that, with the multi-node ability for a resource claim, or rather a resource slice, to represent a multi-node abstract resource, if we combine that with partitionable and took a node label and made each partition into a node selector as well. So essentially it becomes a dynamically scheduled subset of nodes, or sort of like, rather than a statically assigned node label, it becomes effectively delegating the determination of the node label associated with a set of pods, a deployment or whatever, to the scheduler. So it makes it a much more dynamic allocation process. So with just one small change of propagating a node label on each of the sub partitions, we could actually combine these two models to create this, to model this properly. So that's kind of the idea behind this document.
Can I,
So
can
we
I ask a
wanted to
couple of
bring-
questions?
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so we have a similar problem, and I was modeling it with having specific configs added to the claims that allowed me to link. It wasn't, so you, in your pod spec, you'd still have to put some topology constraint to get the scheduling to happen. But then also in the claim spec, you could duplicate that topology constraint and then force the DRA driver to block until all pods had come online and things like this. I think it would be better to do what you're describing if we had a first class field that allowed us to do this scheduling based on something like a node selector directly in the claim. That seems reasonable. But the bigger question I have though is the idea that you would have multiple pods reference this same claim in order to, let's say that you had, because it depends on how many workloads you want to be able to reference this as a shared resource. How many pods do you envision actually accessing it at once? Because
So you're getting,
design we were doing for IMAX, we ran into the limitation that only 32 pods can actually reference a claim at any given time.
that's probably too restrictive for us as well. I think we have to talk to some other folks and make sure, but I think we do substantially larger, like,
Yeah.
like even like 1,000 nodes slices and stuff, right? Like, so we need to think about that. That's a great point. Thank you for raising that. The other thing it gets to is your mention of you needing to do anti-affinity. So if you go back to the December meeting, I added this. I know you talked about this, Kevin, like 6 months ago, this idea of linked claims. And I'm
Right.
calling it that here. I don't know if it's the same concept you had or not, but the
Similar.
point is the secondary scheduling, right? So like the fact that I need to schedule those, even if we just do say 16 nodes, right? I have 16 pods then. And right now I would use anti-affinity, or I would make sure that a pod grabs all of some resource on the node so that like every node gets a single pod. But that's a very reductive case. Maybe it's good enough for now. But do we have a need for the ability to say, if we have multi-node, this kind of comes in with single node, but even more so with multi-node resources, I can claim this resource, I can allocate this subset of nodes, but then I want to secondarily schedule pods constrained to that subset. I can do that by just pointing them all at the same claim, but I don't have a lot of control over the rest of the scheduling.
Yeah, I mean, I think
criteria.
where the dots get connected in this is that in our resource slice, we advertise resources associated with a node selector. But that node selector can be a broad set of potential labels, right? But what we want to be able to then do at the resource claim level is say, okay, well, from that broad set from which these resources can be allocated from the node selector on the slice, constrain me to this specific one when I allocate from that. But do
Right,
that at the
exactly.
level.
Yeah, the proposal sort of does that, but it does that by essentially setting the node selector on each device, logical device. So each partition gets its node selector that defines which it should be on, and then that gets copied into the resource claim, which can then restrict scheduling later.
Right, and that works for the partitionable model, but you still each of those partitions now could still be 128 nodes, right? That partition could be 128 node partition. And now I have 128 pods I need to schedule to it. Is there additional criteria? For us, I don't think it actually matters that much because we can just say anti-affinity within that 128 and we're done. But are there use cases where you need more selectivity? For us, those are all identical nodes and we're going to put one pod per node and we're okay. But are there other cases? I don't know.
Yeah, the biggest thing I think is the limitation of 32, which Patrick and I discussed before the holidays, and we never got a straight answer on if we can just kind of blindly up that to a bigger number or not. Because right now it's set at 32, and we had a proposal out there in the API review Slack channel about whether we can just, as a patch release, call it a bug and up that number to some bigger amount, because if we don't do that, it'll have to go through multiple cycles before we actually have a bigger, a higher limit there. And it's fairly complicated how we migrate from one version to the next through that. Maybe Patrick can expand on that a bit.
Yeah, it's part of our API validation that the slice must have less or equal to 32 entries. And that's the limit enforced by 132. If we support downgrades, we can't just say, okay, now in 133, it's more, but when you downgrade and you have an invalid object in your API server, that the 132 API server will refuse to update because it became invalid. And that's why expanding limits that are enforced by the current API server is a multi-release process. You have to basically allow the new limit in one release, 133, but only for existing objects. And then in the next release after that, you can start allowing the larger number in new objects, in new resources. And that's basically two releases that you have to wait until you actually can use or rely on the higher or more flexible validation.
Well, partitionable won't be beta until 2 releases, so now would be the time, even if we have to go through that process, now would be the time to do it so that
Yep.
and maybe we can change the validation when the alpha gate is set.
When you think about performance, with the prioritize list, I ran into some issues where certain things can take a very long time to in the allocator in some special cases. We need to think about that.
We have a couple hands. I think Marlo's hand went up first. You're on mute, Marlo, if you're talking.
Sorry about that. Still new year. You already know my question, John, which is basically, I need those limits up for the types of systems we're looking at.
You said you need those limits upped? Is that what you said?
Yeah, up, like
Yeah,
32 is well below what we would be looking at on a node. We're looking at.
Right, even for like CPU. Well,
Yeah,
that's the
for
number of
CPU,
pods
it's
you
much
can
bigger.
point.
Yeah.
That's the number of pods you can point in an individual claim. That's the specific limit we're talking about here.
Mhm.
So it's not the limit on like number of, I don't think there is a limit on number of individual devices. We shard them out across different slices. So there's a limit on an
128
individual slice, but that slice
128
can.
per slice, but there's no limit on the number of slices.
Yeah, it just
But there
gets
is-
really ugly the bigger it gets, because currently there are CPUs that are much larger than the 128. So you're looking at potentially 4 slices per node, and that increasing as you go.
but
Yeah, the
it's-
problem is
we have that limit is because of
CPU
the,
size.
there's a limit on
Yeah.
the object size.
Yeah.
And it's CPU. So that's the limiting factor.
Yeah, I'm aware of the limiting factor. I'm just wondering, because I've talked to John a little bit about going to a pooling model, if that is still a thing we should consider.
So yeah, what Marlo's talking about is we've talked in the past about, right now, our device model is explicitly list every single device. And if every single device is identical and we actually don't, or there's identical pools within a thing, we could have devices that look more like what device plugin would have published originally as a single, a single extended resource. But each one is like, so you'd have a pool, the
That's-
CPU 0 pool, which is 128 cores or whatever it is. I don't know, right?
That's a
And
separate
so,
That's
yes,
having
it's a
an
separate
al-
discussion. That's a separate
having
device
an
model.
alternate representation for devices.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be one solution to the problem Marlo's talking about.
Yeah, and it might simplify it, because currently enumerating every device is kind of a headache.
Okay, thanks, Marlo. Abhishek?
Hey, hi. So in this multi-host model, how would preemption work? Any thoughts?
How would preemption work?
Yeah.
Can you explain problem, like, if you preempt, first of all, we haven't addressed preemption, I think, at all yet, right? So, so there's that. But if you got multiple, let me think through the problem here and maybe explain what I think you're asking, and then you can tell me how wrong I am. The problem maybe that you're saying is, hey, we have a workload, it's grabbed, say, this sub-partition nodes 1 and 2 on the screen. But now we have a higher priority workload that comes in that needs the full 8 by 8. And so how do we decide that we can preempt that? And I don't know the answer to that yet.
Okay, because so maybe training does not have that use case, but inference, we are seeing inference use cases wherein it's hard to take down one of the inference server. Like, let's say you have a scaled up VLLM pods that are running under a deployment, and that deployment is spread out, and then the next workload comes in. So now we have to pick and choose, which replicas from n nodes have to be taken down such that the next workload could fit in. And there the preemption problem becomes a little bit tricky, because now you have to understand the workload, which pods belong to a single workload, such that you don't terminate many individual inference servers. So that's the angle that I'm coming from.
Yeah, I almost, like, I'm wondering if that's a scheduling gate external controller with more smarts than we're ever going to be able to build in problem. But I think we need to explore it.
Okay.
Right? Like, you solved that, I think, a lot in your use cases with your InstaSlice thing. Like, you have the scheduling gate and you have more context maybe than, I don't know when I think we should continue that discussion.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we are talking to work groups serving while we are building this. Yeah, maybe they have use cases that we can build better solutions here.
I mean, that's what this group is for. Like, I mean, we only have so much outreach we can do. Each of us, I think, involved here talks to our customers and the people we know. But I would certainly, you love you've been our strongest user representative here. So the more you can provide and other people you can pull in that might have use cases, obviously the better job we'll do.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, any other topics? Because I think that sounds like we've got plenty of work. We got to get the KEPs sorted out. The list that was from last time, plus the couple of extras that people added today, seems like a good list to me. Sounds like people are okay with the idea of, in our partitionable model, adding this node selector, which gets us enough of the way on this that we can learn. And there might be additional KEPs needed to refine it, but I think we can make something work with this. Any other? Oh, Rita, do you want to? Yeah. It sounded like we briefly talked about it, but if you want to say something, jump in, and then Sergey after that. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if folks had a chance to maybe look at the KEP. Let me link it. Oh, actually, it's actually in the meeting agenda as well. But anyway, the TLDR here is I moved a lot of the admin access stuff to a new KEP. Hopefully we can get it reviewed and implemented for 133 alpha.
Awesome. Thank you.
I don't know if we want to go into any of the details, but I was hoping Patrick here?
Yeah, he mentioned it earlier, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that briefly, and I basically summarized it and said that it looks straightforward. I think we can do it definitely, and details can be done in the cap review. I'm still on vacation today, so I haven't really looked at it again. But I'll start tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, no worries. I just want to make sure I get eyes on it, and then hopefully we get this added to 133 milestone. So we don't miss the 133 train before the cap freeze. I think that's like February 13th or something like that.
It's soon for sure. Yep. Thank
Yeah,
you.
5 weeks.
Yeah, that's kind of, yeah, this came up with the same exact, Patrick brought it up and said exactly the same thing, that he wanted, you would
Okay.
had it pretty well along, and we should try and add it.
Okay, cool. And I have a working PR, so I just want to make sure this is generally accepted before I create the PR, to avoid more turns there. So if you guys can put some eyes on it, that'd be great. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Rita. Sergey?
Yeah, sorry for being late, and sorry for bringing topics that is not maybe that exciting. It's about device failures. We made a talk with Brunal, and I have a blog post draft explaining what kind of failures we were looking at and what kind of improvements we want to make in Kubelet. And also, I started putting together a document with all the failure modes for infrastructure reliability. Like, what will happen if device plugin or DRA plugin port will be evicted, or like what will happen, like how fast it will reconnect, how fast Kubelet will recover. All those use cases I posted in a document. I know we have a few issues here and there explaining different aspects of it, but I thought that document will be a better place to structure them. And I created it just before holidays, so I wanted to really like kind of highlight it in this new year. So in 133 we can take a look at least some of those issues and try to tackle them.
Awesome. Thank you, Sergey. Do you think this should be in the docs somewhere, right? Like maybe there's a troubleshooting section, or there's a few different areas of the docs where something like this might be able to live, and there's nobody will find it, no one of our users will find it in some random Google Doc. So if we can eventually migrate it there.
Yeah, and there are a few aspects of it. Like, first aspect is, what is the best practice to implement device DRA plugin? Like, how do you retry? Like, what do you supposed to do? Like, how do you not keep a state of your plugin? So if it will be killed, it will be re-entrant, and it wouldn't lose a state. At least nothing important will be lost. So that is best practices that we will need to publish for DRA plugin authors, but also we'll need to describe the behavior of Kubelet, like how Kubelet will retry plugins, like how fast it will reconnect to them. With the device plugins, you want to make sure that we already have this error condition saying that if you fail to create a socket for plugins to connect to, then we'll mark Kubelet as unhealthy. So it's already in 132. I wonder if we need to do something similar for DRA plugins. Like, if DRA plugins keep failing, like, is Kubelet even healthy in this case? Like, do we consider it healthy? That kind of questions we'll need to discuss. I started this document, but I really appreciate any feedback and more use cases that we need to cover.
Okay, thank you, Sergey.
I wonder if it will be useful to go through the document next meeting, or I mean,
we have 25 minutes now. If you want, I think we're all here. If it's
okay, I can try. I again, it's like second day after vacation, and I wrote it before vacation. So.
if you want to wait, I don't think it's urgent. We can wait till next time.
Okay, let's wait till next time.
Okay.
I think it's in good shape, but like my mind is not there yet.
Yeah, I hear you. I just got back half an hour ago, so and Patrick's not even back yet.
Okay.
All right, Jack.
Sergey, are you looking for comments right now?
Yeah, if you have any comments
Okay.
now, it will be great.
Yeah, I'll take a round on both of those. Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome. All right, last call, folks, or we'll get 20 minutes back.
Should we? I think John, are you here, John? You want to do a quick shout out to your item?
Oh,
Yes.
John H. Yeah, okay.
Yep, I can do that. So yeah, before the break, I did open a PR to the Kubernetes.io website with some more DRA docs, so kind of one level deeper than the concept docs that already exist. So this PR right now adds 3 new documents. One of them is under the tasks in the docs with some troubleshooting steps right now, but I think we're kind of thinking that could be other things kind of like that too. And then there are 2 new tutorial documents. One of them kind of goes through some examples, like in the example DRA driver repo with like, I want 2 pods to share one claim, or I want 2 pods to have different claims with different GPUs and that kind of thing. And then there's one other document describing kind of the difference between using DRA and device plugins and node affinity and that kind of thing for kind of one example use case. So yeah, right now the documents are really bare, just to kind of get the gist of what they might look like once they're fleshed out, but still looking for feedback just to see if we're organizing all of those things the way we want and if there's anything missing or that kind of thing, just to kind of figure out exactly what we want the content to look like at kind of a high level. So yeah, I've gotten some feedback already and that's awesome. But I would love to see more and get more details in there fleshed out. So yeah, that's all I wanted to mention about that.
Perhaps also relevant in this context is the ability to just pull an image of the example driver in a fully fleshed out YAML that just lives in the website as an embedded document. Because I think we currently don't have that. So any example that we put onto the website basically needs to start with check out the example driver, build your own image, publish it. And that's a bit too low level and too cumbersome for a Kubernetes website documentation thingy. I think we should, in this cycle, look into getting images published on a regular basis with a tagged version for the example driver, and then use those images in those documentation examples.
Yeah, there's no images
yeah.
currently published for the example driver as soon as you build it yourself.
And it was too early in the past, but now we do have something that's well, that's beta. We basically can say this driver version works with any core DDRA structured parameters, beta 132, 133, and it shouldn't break. So I think now is a good time to have that image published.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Also try it out on different Kubernetes versions. I tried running it on GKE and I ran into some issues that I had to work around. So just running it directly doesn't work. So that's what we can look at to make sure we have instructions for other things than kind.
That's the thing with enabling DRA. That's still kind of a bit in the air, and it depends on the Kubernetes distro how to do that. But the driver itself should work more or less the same way on
GKE. You need to add a resource quota to make it run, for example.
Okay, so the pod spec itself of the daemon set wasn't sufficient. Was that the problem?
It sets a priority class, and on GKE you need to add a resource quota on the namespace to make it allow it to run.
Okay.
Yeah,
I wonder whether that is
out of the box on different Kubernetes distros.
I wonder how these issues are handled, because strictly speaking, Kubernetes pods should be portable between different distros, and if you now have to end up doing things differently depending on the distro, I wonder how that fits into the.
No, they're portable. It's just that you don't have like the way GKE policies are set up. I guess we don't automatically give you, for priority. I mean that's an entirely different topic. There's a whole industry devoted to config management. So I don't think we want to get into that, but this is the last few years for Morton, dealing with that. But we can address it in docs or put some resource code. We'll figure that out. Kevin, did you have a comment there? It sounded like you were.
I don't remember. I think I was just saying, I think the main point is that we just want to make sure the example driver works out of the box on different Kubernetes
Yeah.
environments, and if there's kind.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Well, everybody, we got some docs and PRs to review, so let's get to it, and we'll get everything milestoned and start working towards getting everything merged for enhancements freeze in February 13th. So thank you all, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.